the next piece, which gives me as much pleasure because it's two of my colleagues again from British Esports, Morgan Ashurst and Alice Leaman, who are going to talk to us about the Women in Esports initiative that they've set up, which I think is one of the missing parts of what we've been talking about today. We talked about gender neutrality early on, and I think that the video games and esports industries are really, really pushing ahead with proper representation, diversity and inclusion. I think actually leaving a lot of other industries in the dust, frankly, but I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to leave it to Morgan and Alice to just to give us a sort of 15, 20 minutes insight from the cold face. And if everyone's got questions, please put them in Slido because I'll make sure we ask them. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Andy. I'm Alice and I work on the Women in Esports initiative with my colleague Morgan. We've got a lot to talk about, but we're going to try and cover the main sort of topics for you that would be most useful, especially given the most recent online growth in people understanding what esports is and utilising it within education. So a bit of background on Women in Esports. We started in late 2019. It was a campaign to celebrate women within the industry, and it was primarily content focused. So that was through different interviews, different videos, top tips and advice articles. And it really celebrated that although the esports industry is still unfortunately seen as primarily male dominated, there are a lot of great women in roles, whether it's behind the scenes or public facing, and it's only continuing to grow. So this content proved to be very successful and led to the development of our Women Esports committee and into an initiative. Our committee is made up of 13 different members from women all across the industry, from PR to tournament organisers, education representatives and students as well, to make sure that we're looking at all perspectives and tapping into the knowledge of everyone in their respective areas. This makes sure that we're looking at all viewpoints and not just our own to make sure we're moving in the right direction. We also speak to a lot of different observers that come to our meetings and our connections through British Esports to make sure we're getting all the guidance and support we can to make sure, again, the initiative is going forward correctly. Lockdown has been really difficult for everyone and it's something we're really aware of. However, it has had in some ways a positive effect on the esports industry due to the growth in online socialization. The more public awareness of esports and people staying at home has kind of enabled more people to jump into the industry. So whether that's gathering experience or playing in online tournaments competitively or streaming casually as well. With more people getting involved, this really makes us need to ensure that the community within esports is safe and inclusive as possible for anyone to feel welcome, especially with all these new people joining. Likewise, with more schools and colleges discovering the benefits of esports, and that's a club or a course or working in the championships, we need to ensure that any best practices for inclusivity and diversity are strengthened and promoted from an earlier age. Some of the projects that we'll speak about and that we have been working on are quite long-term or larger scale. Nothing is unfortunately quite a quick fix or quite simple, and these notions will take time. However, with the right support and encouraging diversity from a younger age, we can really develop and strengthen perspective in time. So last year, there was a lot of big topics, especially, for example, the Me Too movement that occurred about August time last year. This left a lot for us to think about as the Women in Esports Committee and how we proceed with the initiative. So this year, we're looking to take on all that knowledge and feedback and be a lot more active in certain key areas. So some of the key pillars that we're looking to target are education, so how we can better educate and encourage best practice from a younger age. Community and a pledge, so celebrating women within the industry and giving individuals a voice. And also female participation. So we think this is the most tangible way to gain feedback and statistics on the level of progress of the initiative and the success. Therefore, throughout this year, one of our key aims is really to promote and encourage women to get involved in the community, primarily by putting on more regular tournaments.
So, as Alice mentioned, a really key area for us to be proactive in throughout 2021 is by focusing on areas such as tournament participation. So eSport tournaments is a really important area to us at Women in Esports. So not only what we could be doing as an initiative, but also what we could be doing more as an esports industry to help increase female participation when it comes to tournaments. So we're already aware that through online tournaments, offline tournaments, or open qualifiers, all of these major events that happen throughout the year, despite them being open to all male and female, we're still seeing a large majority of people take part in these tournaments being primarily male. So whilst it's not easy for us to know at the moment why it is primarily males taking part in these tournaments, and why don't we have as many females competing at a higher level, we're basically looking at women in esports on how we're able to play a part and encourage more females to basically take part in an environment that they're comfortable with. So this is playing in all-female teams, playing in all-female tournaments, learning communication and the skills that they need in order to progress further in their competitive career. So to help us answer some of these questions, we conducted a survey earlier on in 2020, which was answered by females who either work within the industry or people who play competitively or spectate or are just general esport enthusiasts, to help us figure out, number one, is there a demand for female-only tournaments, but also whether it's beneficial to those who are taking part also. So there's always been a massive debate kind of stimulating over the past couple of years around whether segregated tournaments are a good thing or whether they actually play a part in why we don't see as many female pros today. So through running this survey, this has really helped us to answer some of these key questions or areas around segregated tournaments. And a large majority of those who took part in our survey actually ended up saying that having female-only tournaments is a fantastic entryway or stepping stone for women to look to enter the industry from a competitive side. So from our side, we then started to realise that there is a demand for female tournaments, but not many platforms or organisers have dedicated focuses towards this area. So as the Women in Esports initiative, what could we be doing better, or how exactly can we get more involved within this area? So we started off by having conversations with Faceit towards the end of last year, and managed to agree a partnership where essentially Women in Esports have their very own organiser page on the Faceit hub. So what this allows us to do at Women in Esports is host more regular tournaments and to create that platform and community for females, especially on Faceit. So in December, we hosted our very first Faceit tournament, which was in Counter-Strike. So we chose this particular game with it already having such a thriving female community. And despite us not really having an established presence within this area before, we were really happy to have teams take part in our first tournament. So in 2021, we're basically looking at hosting a lot more tournaments across Faceit. So this will be doing a Counter-Strike tournament every other month, but then also looking to dabble in other titles such as Rocket League, Dota 2, League of Legends, and Overwatch as well. So we should hopefully have an announcement coming soon of our outline tournament schedule for 2021. So that should come very soon, hopefully. So outside of Faceit, we were also looking at other ways we were able to be active or engaged within the tournament side of the industry. So we collaborated on our first showcase event outside of Faceit, which was in collaboration with Rick's GG, which was a Valorant tournament, a female-only Valorant tournament, with, I think it was around 16 teams with a £2,000 prize pool as well. So the great thing about this is that it was incredibly well received. We did a broadcast over 2 days, reached just under 80,000 live views as well, which is fantastic to be able to give those females partaking in the tournament the opportunity or the platform to be able to showcase their talent as well. So following its success, we're basically looking to do more showcase tournaments outside of what we're doing on Faceit, but also looking into other areas such as how we're able to increase female participation within our very own British Esports Championships also.
Brilliant. Thanks, Morgan. Thanks, Alice. I think we've lost connection with Alice temporarily. Almost feels like Newsnight, doesn't it? And there's a couple of questions in the chat from our audience. From Sarah Herzog here. Are the results of the online survey that you ran, are they going to be published anywhere? Because she would like to reference them in a report that she's preparing on female gamers, female game students.
Very good
question. Are we likely to have those?
The first one that we did was a more condensed survey. So it was roughly just under 100 people that took part. So I think what we're wanting to do a little bit further, especially with us looking to venture further into female participation on the tournament area throughout this year, is to maybe look at doing something on a larger scale and hopefully get more participants to take part. But if you're looking to do a research project, we're more than happy to help with our findings from that particular one, but it is more predominantly tournament focused at the moment. And then hopefully later this year, we can look to do more surveys to hopefully get some more data to help support other areas or other big questions that people want to know around diversity and inclusion within esports.
Nice one. Thank you for that. There's another question here from Mike Griffiths, who says, similar to dedicated tournaments, how important is in-game representation? For example, women's leagues in FIFA, W Series and F1 for women to get involved in esports?
I think just based off of the survey that we did, is we were quite surprised to see that there is definitely a demand for female-only tournaments in general. And it's a real shame to see that only Counter-Strike really has an established pro scene for women to be able to partake in. So I think it is really crucial that we look or try and see more platforms or tournament organisers getting heavily involved to try and get more women involved in their tournaments in general. Whilst I think it's great for us to be able to do this at a grassroots level as a stepping stone, ideally female tournaments are a path to progression for us to be able to see more female pros moving forward. But at the same time, there's not, with franchise leagues and other more formalized leagues put together, it makes it a lot harder for females to be seen. So I think by having these tournaments in the first place is great to be able to get that to get eyes on what people are doing or the talent that is out there from a female side, but also for organizations and tournament organizers to see that it's definitely a great area or still a thriving community with the numbers going up year on year on females partaking in esports, to be able to find the investment to be able to see more things like that in the future. So
yeah, I mean, that I'm going to say this, that's a good answer, because I think it's a difficult situation in that it's nuanced. In an ideal world, from the get-go, gender wouldn't come into this at all. But we're not in an ideal world, and we need to make our world more ideal. So therefore, having a dual approach to this, I think, is practical, if nothing else. And that feels to me like where we're going. As esports does widen its demographic, and given that 50% of the people on the planet are female, and given that female gamers are getting a bigger and bigger slice of the whole gaming pie in terms of participation, it's not going to be long before marketeers realise that they're missing a trick here, and there should be top female teams in every tournament, because that's going to be the identifier for a lot of people, a lot of fans. So I think again, the commercials will catch up on this, albeit for the record, I think it's a bit disappointing that we're not going faster. And that leads into, from Kenji Lam from CDN, who's asked a question. Welcome back, Alice. Who's asked a question around the chat in online gaming can be quite toxic. And that's where you sort of practice your skills. So how can we help make those spaces much more welcoming for women?
I think, Alice, with your part on inclusive writing, on how we're better able to market things, might answer that quite well.
Yeah, so sorry, my internet absolutely cut out then. But I would say in terms of making the community a better place, it's more about the best practice and from a younger age. I don't know if Morgan touched on this while I was actually sorting out my laptop. But if we can try and work on, for example, encouraging more mixed teams at a younger age, or looking at, especially throughout the education space, as to what is the best practice, how you should speak to others. A lot of that is kind of common sense, but it touches on the fact that the esports community can be a bit hostile. Instead of some games I play as well online, you feel a bit wary to use voice chat. And I think it's mainly about making the community more engaging and more welcoming, but also about giving women the confidence to feel like they can talk. and they can speak up in games, whether that's online or even at like a LAN event in the future when we're allowed to again. So it's looking at those best practices, celebrating the women in the industry, and then encouraging others in tournaments to speak up, like, for example, through the VIX tournament that we did, where we showcased the great talent that women have got, and it normalizes it to an extent. And the more that we see women getting involved, the more that we feel like they are part of the industry and they are part of the community, and they should be celebrated just as equally as all the other men in there as well. I think that would be what I'd suggest, though, in terms of making the community better. But I know there's a lot of other initiatives doing similar things to us that are all working together. I think we should all kind of celebrate that and work in a unit. There's no need to work against each other. We're all looking for the same goals. And it is a long term. It's not a short term fix, unfortunately. The community will take time to change and become more diverse and inclusive. So it is a long term process. It's definitely not something we can fix with, one article or one project. It's going to take a lot of time, but again, working from the younger age through education and best practice from earlier on will hopefully then include the stepping stone to making it more welcoming in the future, because those who, like in education, will then use those values later in their life.
I think to some degree as well,
did you see TSM's? Sorry, going to say, did you see TSM's all-female Valorant team? Mark has got it in the chat. Did you notice that? So that was kind of like interesting from Riot, actually, who, let's say, in recent, months or years, have had their issues with toxicity within their communities, actually. So maybe some good will come out of that. We hope. It looks like a good start, certainly to me. Sorry, Morgan, you were going to say something. I was
going to say, I think we are seeing it normalize a lot more now with large female presence within the esports scene in general, just from, I guess, more so a streaming perspective as well. So you look at, your Pokimane, your Valkyrie, all of these huge female personalities that are now starting to, absolutely smash it in terms of numbers, which makes it normal to see, on the front page of Twitch or people be successful. A lot more females are starting to make their way up the ranks now as well. So it's even just in that sense and getting more personalities come through from the female side, which is great to see as well.
Yeah, and I think to sort of just to link back to, because it's easy to link back to the world of sport, what we could perhaps call traditional sport. There are very few sports where males and females compete together. I mean, that's always been a concern of mine. There are a few exceptions in sport, equestrian sports, for example, that they have male and female on a level playing field. And for any of those who were watching Cheltenham last week, you'll see Rachel Blackmore smash everyone out of the park. She was the top jockey, and her on her own got more wins than Team GB. Okay, so there you go. She's from Ireland. But I think in esports, it feels like there's a real opportunity, as we cast forward the next, perhaps 5 years or so, just to see complete equality. I mean, in fact, the whole thing just being leveled. And I think that's got to be really welcome and very exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Good. I think the fact that it's so gender neutral is really positive, and we should embrace that for the future, not only for the champs, but also for, professional esports as well. I think there's a lot of room to improve and room to grow, but it is really exciting. And yeah, it's just how we then develop that and make sure it continues to be welcoming, continues to be diverse.
Good. Okay. Well, look, that's it. Thank you. We're out of time. Just appreciate your talk today, both of you, Alice and Morgan. And, I'm particular fans of yours because I work with you. So I see the work you've done day in, day out. And you've really pushed the whole thing forward in a way that is magnificent. So thank you on behalf of the games industry and esports industry. Thanks to you two for what you're doing. Thank you very much.